Hello, Squirrel Squad. I'm on a little earlier today. Yay. Maybe I won't fall asleep. Let's see. Last thing I said was, or read, she found her sanctum all aglow with autumn leaves, and on her table so many rare and pretty things she quite forgot she was an heiress and only felt how rich she was in loving friends. One gift greatly pleased her, though she could not help smiling at the source from whence it came, for Mac sent her a Cupid, not the chubby child with a face of naughty merriment, but a slender, winged youth leaning on his unstrung bow with a broken arrow at his feet. A poem, to Psyche, came with it, and Rose was much surprised at the beauty of the lines, for instead of being witty, complimentary, or gay, there was something nobler than mere sentiment in them, and the sweet old fable lived again in language which fitly painted the maiden's soul looking for a love worthy to possess it. Rose read them over and over as she sat among the gold and scarlet leaves which glorified her little room, and each time found new depth and beauty in them, looking from the words that made music in her ear to the lovely shapes that spoke with their mute grace to her eye. The whole thing suited her exactly. It was so delicate and perfect in its way, for she was tired of costly gifts and valued very much this proof of her cousin's taste and talent. Seeing nothing in it but an affectionate desire to please her, all the rest dropped in at intervals through the day to say a loving word, and last of all came Mac. Rose happened to be alone with Dulce, enjoying a splendid sunset from her western window, for October gave her child a beautiful good night. Rose turned around as he entered, and putting down the little girl, went to him with the evening red shining on her happy face as she said gratefully, "Dear Mac, it was so lovely. I don't know how to thank you for it anyway, but this," and drawing down his tall head, she gave him the birthday kiss she had given all the others. But this time it produced a singular effect, for Mac turned scarlet, then grew pale, and when Rose added playfully, thinking to relieve the shyness of so young a poet, "Never again say you don't write poetry or call your verses rubbish. I knew you were a genius, and now I'm sure of it," he broke out as if against his will. "No, it isn't genius, it's love." Then, as she shrank a little, startled at his energy, he added with an effort at self-control which made his voice sound strange, "I didn't mean to speak, but I can't suffer you to deceive yourself so. I must tell you the truth and not let you kiss me like a cousin when I love you with all my heart and soul." "Oh, Mac, don't joke," cried Rose, bewildered by this sudden glimpse into a heart she thought she knew so well. "I'm in solemn earnest," he answered steadily. "Pat, you were right." Maybe. Let's see, for his pale excitement in his face, she might have doubted his words. "Be angry if you will, I expected, for I know it's too soon to speak. I ought to wait for years, perhaps. But you seemed so happy, I dared to hope you had forgotten." "Forgotten what?" asked Rose sharply. "Charlie." "Ah, you all will insist on believing that I loved him better than I did," she cried with both pain and impatience in her voice, for the family delusion tried her very much at times. "How could we help it when he was everything women most admire?" said Mac, not bitterly, but as if he sometimes wondered at their want of insight. I do not admire weakness of any sort. I could never love without either confidence or respect. Do me the justice to believe that, for I'm tired of being pitied." She spoke almost passionately, being more excited by Mac's repressed emotion than she had ever been by Charlie's most touching demonstration, though she did not know why. "But he loved you so," began Mac, feeling as if a barrier had suddenly gone down, but not daring to venture in as yet. "That was the hard part of it. That was why I tried to love him, why I hoped he would stand fast for my sake, if not for his own, and why I found it so sad sometimes not to be able to help despising him for his want of courage. I don't know how others feel, but to me love isn't all. I must look up, not down, trust and honor with my whole heart, and find strength and integrity to lean on. I have had it so far, and I know I could not live without it." "Your ideal is a high one. Do you hope to find it, Rose?" Mac asked, feeling with the humility of a genuine love that he could not give her all she desired. "Yes," she answered with a face full of beautiful confidence and virtue, the instinctive desire for the best, which so many of us lose too soon to find again after life's great lessons are well learned. "I do hope to find it, because I try not to be unreasonable and expect perfection. Smile if you will, but I won't give up my hero yet," and she tried to speak lightly, hoping to lead him away from a more dangerous topic. "You'll have to look a long while, I'm afraid," and all the glow was gone out of Mac's face, for he understood her wish and knew his answer had been given. "I have Uncle to help me, and I think my ideal grew out of my knowledge of him. How can I fail to believe in goodness when he shows me what it can be and do? It's no use for me to say any more, for I have very little to offer. I did not mean to say a word till I earned a right to hope for something in return. I cannot take it back, but I can wish you success, and I do, because you deserve the very best." And Mac moved as if he was going away without more words, accepting the inevitable as manfully as he could. "Thank you. That makes me feel very ungrateful and unkind. I wish I could answer you as you want me to. For indeed, dear Mac, I'm very fond of you in my own way." And Rose looked up with such tender pity and frank affection in her face, it was no wonder the poor fellow caught at a ray of hope, and brightened suddenly, saying in his odd way, "Couldn't you take me on trial while you're waiting for a true hero? It may be years before you find him. Meantime, you could be practicing on me in ways that would be useful when you get him." "Oh, Mac, what shall I do with you?" exclaimed Rose, so curiously affected by this very characteristic wooing that she did not know whether to laugh or cry, for he was looking at her with his heart in his eyes, though his proposition was the queerest ever made at such a time. "Just go on being fond of me in your own way, and let me love you as much as I like in mine. I'll try to be satisfied with that." And he took both her hands so beseechingly that she felt more ungrateful than ever. "No, it wouldn't be fair, for you would love the most, and if the hero did appear, what would become of you? I should resemble Uncle Alec in one thing at least, fidelity, for my first love would be my last." That went straight to Rose's heart, and for a minute she stood silent, looking down at the two strong hands that held hers so firmly yet so gently, and the thought went through her mind, must he, too, be solitary all his life? "I have no dear lover as my mother had. Why cannot I make him happy and forget myself?" It did not seem very hard, and she owned that, even while she told herself that compassion was no equivalent for love. She wanted to give all she could and keep as much of Mac's affection as she honestly might, because it seemed to grow more sweet and precious when she thought of putting it away. "You will be like Uncle in happier ways than that, I hope, for you too must have a high ideal and find her and be happy," she said, resolving to be true to the voice of conscience, not be swayed by the impulse of the moment. "I have found her, but I don't see any prospect of happiness, do you?" he asked wistfully. "Dear Mac, I cannot give you the love you want, but I do trust and respect you from the bottom of my heart. If that is any comfort," began Rose, looking up with eyes full of contrition for the pain her reply must give. She got no further, however, for those last words wrought a marvelous change in Mac. Dropping her hands, he stood erect as if inspired with sudden energy and hope, while over his face there came a brave, bright look, which for the moment made him a nobler and comelier man even than ever handsome Prince had been. "It is a comfort," he said, in a tone of gratitude that touched her very much. "You said your love must be founded on respect, and that you have given me, why can I not earn the rest? I'm nothing now, but everything is possible when one loves with all his heart and soul and strength, Rose. Rose, I will be your hero if a mortal man can, even though I have to work and wait for years. I'll make you love me and be glad to do it. Don't be frightened. I've not lost my wits. I've just found them. I don't ask anything. I never speak of my hope. But it's no use to stop me. I must try, and I will succeed." With the last words uttered in a ringing voice, while his face glowed, his eyes shone, and he looked as if he carried out of himself by the passion that possessed him, Mac abruptly left the room like one eager to change words to deeds and begin his task at once. Rose was so amazed by all this that she sat down trembling a little, not with fear or anger, but a feeling half pleasure, half pain, and a sense of some new power, subtle, strong, and sweet, that had come into her life. It seemed as if another Mac had taken the place of the one she had known so long, an ardent, ambitious man, ready for any work now that the magical moment had come when everything seems possible to love. If hope could work such marvelous change for a moment, could not happiness do it for a lifetime? It would be an exciting experiment to try, she thought, remembering the sudden illumination which made that familiar face both beautiful and strange. She could not help wondering how long this unsuspected sentiment had been growing in his heart, and felt perplexed by its peculiar demonstration. For she had never had a lover like this before. It touched and flattered her, nevertheless, and she could not but feel honored by a love so genuine and generous, for it seemed to make a man of Mac all at once, and a manly man too, who was not daunted by disappointment, but could hope against hope, and resolved to make her love him if it took years to do so. There was the charm of novelty about his sort of wooing, and she tried to guess how he would set about it, felt curious to see how he would behave when next they met, and was half angry with herself for not being able to decide how she ought to act. The more she thought, the more bewildered she grew, for having made up her mind, that Mac was a genius, it disturbed all her plans to find him a lover, and such an ardent one. As it was impossible to predict what would come next, she gave up. She gave up trying to prepare for it, and tired with vain speculations, carried Dulce off to bed, wishing she could tuck away her love troubles as quietly and comfortably as she did her sleepy little charge. Simple and sincere in all things, Mac gave Rose a new surprise by keeping his promise to the letter, asking nothing of her, and hang on. His promise, simple and sincere in all things, Mac gave Rose a new surprise by keeping his promise to the letter, asked nothing of her, said nothing of his hope, and went on as if nothing had happened, quite in the old friendly way. Well, no, not quite, for now and then, when she at least expected it, she saw again the indescribable expression on his face, a look that seemed to shed a sudden sunshine over her, making her eyes fall involuntarily, her color rise, and her heart beat quicker for a moment. Not a word did he say, but she felt that a new atmosphere surrounded her when he was by, and although he used none of the little devices most lovers employ to keep the flame alight, it was impossible to forget that underneath his quietude there was a hidden world of fire and force ready to appear at a touch, a word from her. This was rather dangerous knowledge for Rose, and she soon began to feel that there were more subtle temptations than she had expected, for it was impossible to be unconscious of her power or always resist the trials of it, which daily came unsought. She had never felt this desire before, for Charlie was the only one who had touched her heart, and he was constantly asking as well as giving, and wearied her by demanding too much, or oppressing her by offering more than she could accept. Mac did neither. He only loved her, silently, patiently, hopefully, and this generous sort of fidelity was very eloquent to a nature like hers. She could not refuse or chide, since nothing was asked or urged. There was no need of coldness, for he never presumed, no call for pity, since he never complained. All that could be done was to try and be as just and true as he was, and to wait as trustfully for the end, whatever it was to be. For a time she liked the new interest it put into her life, yet did nothing to encourage, and thought that if she gave this love no food, it would soon starve to death. But it seemed to thrive on air, and presently she began to feel as if a very strong will was slowly but steadily influencing her in many ways. In many ways. If Mac had never told her that he meant to make her love him, she might have yielded unconsciously, but now she mistook the impulse to obey this undercurrent for compassion, and resisted stoutly, not comprehending yet the reason for the unrest which took possession of her about this time. She had as many moods as an April day, and would have much surprised Dr. Alec by her vagaries had he known them all. He saw enough, however, to guess what was the matter, but took no notice, for he knew for he knew this fever must run its course, and much medicine only does harm. The others were busy about their own affairs, and Aunt Plenty was too much absorbed in her rheumatism to think of love. For the cold weather set in early, and the poor lady kept her room for days at a time with Rose as nurse. Mark had spoken of going away in November, and Rose began to hope he would, for she decided that this silent sort of adoration was bad for her, as it prevented her from steadily pursuing the employment she had marked out for that year. What was the use of trying to read useful books when her thoughts continually wandered to those charming essays on love and friendship? To copy antique casts when all the masculine heads looked like Cupid and the feminine ones like the Psyche on her mantelpiece? To practice the best music if it ended in singing over and over the pretty spring song without Phoebe's bird chorus? Dulce's company was pleasantest now, for Dulce talked. For Dulce seldom talked, so much meditation was possible. Even Aunt Plenty's red flannel, camphor, and Pond's extract were preferable to general society, and long solitary rides on Rosa seemed the only thing to put her in tune after one of her attempts to find out what she ought to do or leave undone. She made up her mind at last, arming herself with an unmade pen like Fanny Squeers. She boldly went into the study to confer with Dr. Alec at an hour when Mac was usually absent. "I want a pen for marking. Can you make me one, Uncle?" she asked, popping her head in to be sure he was alone. "Yes, my dear," answered a voice so like the doctor's that she entered without delay. But before she had taken 3 steps, she stopped, looking rather annoyed, for the head that rose from behind the tall desk was not rough and gray, but brown and smooth, and Mac, not Uncle Alec, sat there writing. Late experience had taught her that she had nothing to fear. From a tete-a-tete, and having with difficulty taken a resolution, she did not like to fail of carrying it out. Don't get up. I won't trouble you if you are busy. There's no hurry," she said, not quite sure whether it were wiser to stay or run away. Lordy, this goes on and on. Let me see how much longer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 more pages. I ain't got it in me, y'all. I don't have it in me. So we'll stop there. And I'll read another part tomorrow. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Love ya. Bye-bye.